All right, good morning, everyone. We're exploring the rich and complicated history of Christianity and studying the Bible in context. We identify bad theology and misconceptions about God, the Bible, about hell, and following Jesus' teachings. If you find this video helpful, please let us know in the comment section below. We'd love to hear your thoughts and your experiences. I always love hearing your experiences that tie into our messages. So please take the time to put those in for us. We're looking at Genesis chapter 29. I've titled this, Running Away Becomes Running Towards. So you can think about that. What have you run away in your life, and what are you running towards? And how do those two things kind of connect together? We're taking a look at Jacob and Esau. We're looking kind of at the story of Isaac, Jacob, and Esau. Isaac sort of moves out of the picture. Jacob becomes the focus for a while now. A couple of questions for you. Why did Jacob travel east? What does the well signify? Why Jacob removed the stone himself? Why Laban welcomed Jacob so warmly? And what this story teaches us, and that's always the important part. These stories were collected over time. There had been a rich oral history. There are many, many stories that the ancient editors and redactors could have picked from, but they picked this particular story because they're trying to make a point. So what's the point of the story? And we'll talk about that. So Genesis 29, 1 through 14, running away becomes running towards. Here's the story so far. Jacob, the son of promise, flees from the promised land and runs away from Esau. Now, if you remember, he had already taken Esau's birthright, and next he takes Esau's blessing. And when he takes Esau's blessing, Esau vows to kill him. Rebekah overhears this and sends him away. You need to flee. Your brother's going to kill you. And so he runs away. Rebekah covered up his need to run away. She explains to Isaac, oh, you know, Esau married these Hittite women, and I can't stand these Hittite women. This is horrible. What we really need is to get him, you know, a woman from our own clan. So she sends Jacob off to her brother Laban to find a wife. So that's kind of the cover-up story she creates. Okay, we're going to send him off to go find a wife. Isaac sends him to Laban, and if you remember, he stops in Bethel. At least he names the place Bethel because he has this encounter with God there. And that encounter is sort of the turning point of his life. And things begin to change. On his way to Haran, he stops in Luz. That was the original name. He names it Bethel. He has a dream. That's the turning point of his life. God reaffirms the covenant with him, promising land and posterity. Now, of course, there's a couple of obstacles in the way, aren't there? One, he had to leave the promised land. He had to head east back to the other members of his clan. He's got to go to his uncle's place because he's fleeing from Esau, so that's an obstacle in the way. What's the other one? He's not married yet. Now, if we actually follow the chronology of the Bible and accept the ages as true and not ideal numbers, Jacob would have been about 70-something years old at this point and not married yet. Now, I don't know about you, but, you know, guys who are like 70 and not married yet, we have rumors about them. All right? So just, you know, just saying. But he's 70-something years old. He's not married yet. Okay? But God reaffirms the promise with him. And Jacob says, if this is what you're going to do for me, then I will follow and I will serve you. Okay, so let's pick up on the actual verses here. Then Jacob continued on his journey and came to the land of the eastern people. There he saw a well in the open country, with 3 flocks of sheep lying near it before the flocks were watered from that well. Now, one of the questions was, why east? Because it echoes Adam and Eve being kicked out of the Garden of Eden. Where did they go? They went east of Eden. So it's kind of like a fall, okay, in its own little sense. Okay. The stone over the mouth of the well was large. When all the flocks were gathered there, the shepherds would roll the stone away from the well's mouth and water the sheep. Then they would return the stone to its place over the mouth of the well. Jacob asked the shepherds, my brothers, where are you from? We're from Haran, they replied. So he said to them, do you know Laban, Nahor's grandson? Yes, we know him, they answered. Then Jacob asked them, is he well? Yes, he is, they said, and here comes his daughter Rachel with the sheep. Look, he said, the sun is still high. It is not time for the flocks to be gathered. Water the sheep and take them back to the pasture. We can't, they replied, until all the flocks are gathered and the stone has been rolled away from the mouth of the well. Then we will water the sheep. While he was still talking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherd. When Jacob saw Rachel's daughter of his uncle Laban and Laban's sheep, he went over and rolled the stone away from the mouth of the well and watered his uncle's sheep. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and began to weep aloud. He had told Rachel that he was a relative of her father and a son of Rebekah, so she ran and she told her father. As soon as Laban heard the news about Jacob, his sister's son, he hurried to meet him. He embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his home. And there Jacob told him all these things. Then Laban said to him, you are my own flesh and blood. Okay, so let's talk about a couple of different things. First off, here's a well out in the open country. It's not in a town center. Now, I've heard a lot of preachers explain to me, because one of the big things is, why is there this reoccurring theme of all these guys meeting women at the well? They're like, well, because it's in the town center, and that's sort of like the social hub of the whole town. This well's not in the town center. This well is out in the open. Okay? This references Eleazar meeting Rebekah at a well, so it's kind of an echo of that. Okay? But what it really is this. It's a sign of divine grace and guidance. If you remember, every time Isaac dug, he hit water. It was a sign of God's blessing on Isaac. And so having this well out in the open, where you didn't have to drive all the sheep all the way back to town to water them, but having this open area well in the open country was a sign of God's blessing going on. And so all of the shepherds would gather there. But it's also a sign of divine guidance. See, when you go to the well and your future wife is there, God's got a hand in it, right? He's guiding you along. This is the woman you're going to marry. Okay, with 3 flocks of sheep lying near it, because the flocks were watered from that well. Now, I want to point out that the hired servants are being lazy. It says, and Jacob points out to them, hey, why are all the sheep gathered here? It's not time to gather them together. In other words, it's not time to take them back and put them into the pens and stuff like that. It's midday. So why don't you just water them and move on like you're supposed to? And the servants are being lazy. They're like, no, we're not going to do it, right? Look, he said, the sun is high. It's not time for the flocks to be gathered. Water the sheep and take them back to the pasture. We can't, they replied, until all the flocks are gathered and the stone has been rolled away from the mouth of the well. In other words, we're not going to do this. We're not going to go to the effort. We're not going to remove the stone, water the flocks, put the stone back, and then take our flock back out. We're going to wait till everybody gets here, and then we only have to do it once. So they're just being lazy. But is there a problem with this? Well, of course there's a problem with this, because if the sheep are not out in the pasture, they're not eating. If they're not eating, what happens? They're not getting fat. If they're not getting fat, how can you sell a nice, how do you sell a skinny sheep? It just kind of doesn't work. So their laziness is actually affecting Laban's sort of wealth, you might say. The hired servants don't want to roll away the stone multiple times like they're supposed to. This is what you were hired for. We'll just wait till everybody gets here, and then we'll do it. Okay? They don't take the sheep to the pasture where they can graze and grow fat. So Laban is literally getting ripped off by the hirelings. They're not doing their job. And so Jacob decides to do it himself. Jacob saw Rachel's daughter of his uncle Laban and Laban's sheep, and he went over and he rolled the stone away from the mouth of the well and watered his uncle's sheep. See, this is the inversion of the Eleazar and Rebekah story. In that one, Rebekah waters the camels. She does the work. In this one, it's the man who waters. Well, why does he water? Because he has nothing else to offer. See, when Jacob, fled from Esau, he didn't bring a whole bunch of camels and sheep and goats and riches and stuff like that. When Eleazar went to find Rebekah, he took gifts. Jacob has nothing to offer. So he offers the only thing there, which is his service. He offers his service to Rachel. So it's kind of an inversion of the story. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and began to weep aloud. Now, this is a common greeting for relatives. It's inappropriate for strangers. So the fact that he kisses her, he's indicating to her, I'm a relative of yours. That's why it follows up right away. He introduces himself as a family member. It's okay for me to do this. We're family. So he will eventually end up marrying 2 of his cousins. And I know it's like, oh, what is this? Everybody's marrying their cousins, and they're all marrying their half-sisters. This is kind of weird, but that was kind of common. Because again, remember, you wanted to keep a lot of the marriages within the clan, within that particular group. Okay? A lot of the marriages were arranged to keep the wealth together within the clan. So he introduces himself as a family member. I'm your cousin. Okay, my mom, Rebecca, that's your father's sister. Oh, okay. And she runs off and she tells her dad. When he meets Laban, Laban welcomes him very warmly. Laban gives him a kiss too. Welcomes very warmly, and he says, you are flesh, you are my own flesh and blood. In other words, you are now part of this family. So why does Laban welcome so warmly? You know what he's thinking? Free labor. Now, there is a Jewish legend. If you read some of the stuff that's written in the Mishnah, there is a Jewish legend that Laban thought that he had brought gifts and that he was just hiding them. He's like, oh, I'm going to get some more gifts here. But he didn't have anything on him. But he's also thinking free labor. So, you are part of my family. Spoiler alert. Okay, I was asking Alex, can you really spoil, a story that's millennia old? I mean, it's been around for a long, long time. And then I thought to myself, well, yeah, I better put this up because, even though we may have been told this story in Sunday school, it was probably not told, like it should have been told. So here's the spoiler alert for this one. It's Jacob versus Laban. Laban is the villain for the next phase of Jacob's life. Laban's going to turn out to be a villain. He's going to be a trickster. And he's going to take advantage of Jacob. So here's this interesting sort of irony involved. Jacob, who was the trickster, is going to be repeatedly tricked. In other words, whatever you sow, that's what you're going to reap. And Jacob's now going to be on the receiving end of being taken advantage of being tricked. He's going to learn his lesson, and he's going to learn it at the hands of a master trickster like Laban. Now it's interesting, because, in the previous story, it was Rebekah who was the trickster. She's the brother of Laban. Did they learn to be tricksters together somehow? Is that just part of the family trait? Remember, Abraham had broken away from that side of the family to worship Yahweh. We're going to find out later that Laban does not worship Yahweh. He worships other gods. I wonder if he worships trickster gods. That would be interesting to find out. I'll have to do some more research. But Jacob the trickster is about to get repeatedly tricked and taken advantage of. Jacob will have to endure Laban's tricks, and it helps shape his character. He finally learns his lesson. Now, have you ever noticed that there tends to be this pattern, right, of handing down certain family traits? Apparently, trickster is one of them. We're going to find out later that another family trait that gets handed down from generation to generation is favoring one son over the other son. Because as Isaac favored Esau and Rebekah favored Jacob, Jacob will end up favoring Joseph, his son, even though he has 12 of them. Jacob versus Laban. We rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. That's Paul writing in the book of Romans. Maybe it's a good thing that Jacob was finally getting a taste of his own medicine. Maybe he was finally learning what it was like to be on the receiving end of one of these tricks. Okay? He had to suffer a little bit. He had to flee his home. He had to suffer. He had to be repeatedly ripped off by his uncle Laban. But that produces endurance, and endurance produces character. Everybody serves as an example, right? They can be a good example, or they can be a bad example. A bad example, you go, oh, I don't want to follow that example. I don't want to be like that. So it produces character, and then character produces hope. So Jacob is going to have hope in the promise that God gave him. Yes, I'm in this bad situation here with my uncle Laban, but God has promised me that I will return to the land. And God has promised me that I will have a family. And that we will be part of changing the world when I return to the promised land. So he's suffering, but sometimes a little suffering does good for you. All right, so having heard this story, it's not really that interesting of a story, is it? I mean, when you think about it. Jacob, he's got to run from Esau. Well, that's kind of exciting. He meets a woman at the well, he waters some sheep, and he goes and meets his uncle, and his uncle's like, oh, glad you're here. But there's a lot of symbolism hidden in there. But having heard it, how do we live it out? Well, I want you guys to know that we can make a mess of our own life. However, an encounter with God can change our course and give us a new purpose. Jacob had totally messed up his life. Between him and his mother, he's fleeing the promised land. Oh yeah, he's got the birthright. He got the blessing. He's the rightful heir to everything that Isaac owned, and he can't even get near it because his brother's ready to kill him. All this wealth, all this status that he had obtained, he loses it all and has to run away. He's the wealthiest, most important runaway ever. A lot of good it does him, right? And he's going to end up working for his uncle and getting ripped off. But he has an encounter with God, and that changes his life. And that change comes at a well, showing God's blessing, God's guidance, and in the form of Rachel. I put this picture up here of somebody asking a question. I think a lot of people ask the question, what's my purpose in life? Now, I've been, pastoring for a long time. Children, teens, adults, college age. I get this a lot from college age people. They ask me this question a lot. What's my purpose in life? What's my purpose? Some of you have probably thought about that. What is my purpose in life? What is it? I think Jacob had no purpose other than, I want status and power. But the encounter changed that. God says, I'm going to do something with you. And so a lot of people wonder, well, what does God want to do with me? What is it? I think one of the problems is that we think we have some very specific purpose. I've seen people struggle. Well, I don't know if God's purpose for my life is I should become a beautician or a manicurist. It's like, I don't think God planned your life that much. Okay? I don't think that's the kind of purpose that, we should be worrying too much about. How do I find my purpose? Well, I think living it out is kind of like this picture here. See, it's just a road. And it heads off into the distance, and in the distance, it's a movement towards God. I think that's what our purpose in life is, to move towards God. I think as we move down the road, that we have some latitude. We can go quick, we can go slow. We can stop and look at the scenery, maybe have a picnic beside the side of the road. We can take the car, we can take a motorcycle, we can take a bike, we can walk, we can run, skip, jog, do whatever you want. I think we have some latitude in this. I think our purpose is more direction than specific. I don't think God gets up in the morning and goes, let me check everybody's purpose. All right, Greg is going to have cornflakes this morning. That's his purpose in life this morning, is to have cornflakes. I don't think God does that for us. I think God is looking at Greg and Marlene and everybody else in this room and just saying, your purpose is to come closer to me, to be in relationship with me, to become more like me. He's drawing us towards himself. I think that's our purpose. And how we get there, I think we have a lot of latitude. Just please don't go off-roading. I think that's the problem, is when you decide to go off-roading. Stop worrying so much about a very specific purpose. Well, I don't know. Will I miss God's purpose if I decide to become a lawyer? Are you pursuing him? Are you trying to get closer to him and become more like him? Then no, you'll be fine. Yes, but maybe I should become a circus clown instead. Lawyer? Circus clown? I don't know. What's God's purpose for me? Be a funny lawyer? I don't know. No, God's purpose is just keep moving towards him. It's more directional than specific. Our main purpose is to be in relationship with God. Literally, I believe that is what we were created for, is to be in relationship with him. We were created in his image. We were created to be like him. And we can't be like him. We can't become children of God unless we imitate God. That's what that whole idiom means, to be children of, to be like. That's our purpose, is to become more and more like him, to show his characteristics, to show love and kindness and compassion and mercy. To enjoy that relationship and to become children of God, to imitate him. For some of us, that's like, what? We're supposed to enjoy the relationship? Yeah. You're supposed to enjoy it. It should be a healthy relationship, something that brings you joy, something that brings you peace, something that brings you hope. You know, I hear some people sometimes and they're just like, oh, I'm so afraid of God. Because they think God is this horrible, condemning, judgmental, angry God. And they can't enjoy the relationship. Everything they do out of fear. Well, if I don't do it, God's going to send me to hell for all eternity. And there's just no joy. There's just fear and anxiety. I see people who are depressed. I go on to, social media and I look at some of these groups, they're ex-evangelical groups, ex-fundamentalist groups, ex-Calvinist groups. And they talk about the fear and depression that they had. And how even after they've moved away from those kind of churches, they still live with anxiety. They've been marked by an unhealthy relationship because they were taught that God was something other than what he truly is. God is not like our earthly fathers. Our earthly fathers are imperfect. They make mistakes. Some of them were angry. Some of them were abusive. God is not like that. God is calling you to come in and enjoy, to be in a healthy relationship with him. And the more that you're in that relationship with him, the more you can heal some of those earthly father wounds that you've received. When you understand this is what a good father is like. So that's our main purpose, is to be in a relationship with God and to enjoy that relationship. Trust me, if you're at a church and you're not enjoying the relationship that you have with God, if you're living in fear, if you're living with anxiety about it, if you're all depressed because of it, they're not teaching you who God is. They're teaching you something else. Each part of the journey teaches us something different. Jacob is going on a journey. He had his whole trickster time, living with Isaac and Rebekah and Esau. And he has his little trickster time over there. And then things blow up in his face. Now he's on his next part of the journey. He had to run away from that situation. Now he starts running towards something else. He's running towards the promise that God has given him. Now there's been consequences, and he's got to learn some lessons. Isn't that the worst part? You have to learn some lessons along the way. But each part of the journey will teach us something. That's why you need to talk to old people. Seriously, this is why you need to talk to old people. Because they've been on a longer journey, and they've learned a lot more lessons. Now, I know every teenager who probably just heard that, just like turned it off. Yeah, I'm not talking to old people. Tell me the same story 12 times. Yeah. Okay? But they really have learned stuff that's helpful to us. There's a lot of wisdom out there. The good times and the hardship are our testimony about God's grace and blessing. We pass through hardship. Hardship's temporary. But God is always leading and guiding and blessing us. And we can turn around and we can share those stories with one another. This is what God has done for me. You know, I was in this really dark place. And even in the darkness, he was there. And he brought me out of it. Our shared stories teach the community, so share your stories. Don't keep them to yourself. When God pulls you out of a bad place, when God pulls you towards him, when he pulls you out of the darkness, when he pulls you out of those times of hardship, you need to share those stories because it teaches us, the whole community. We need your stories. We need your experiences. Remember, even when we're running away from our messes, God gives us the direction to run towards him. So here's Jacob. I'm running away from Esau. Man, did I make a mess over there. My own brother's going to kill me. Now I have to flee the promised land. I have to leave behind all the wealth. I don't have a wife. Oh yeah, Rebecca made up the story that I need to go get a wife. But that's not what he was actually running. He was running away from Esau. Now he's running towards, because he has an encounter with God. God reaffirms his commitment to him. He has an encounter with God, and God gives him direction. Yeah, you're going to go to Laban, you're going to get a wife, and I'm going to bring you back. I'm going to give you the land. I'm going to give you children. I'm going to bless you. So now he's running towards something. And he arrives at that well, the symbol of God's blessing and guidance. And who's the first person who shows up? Rachel. Rachel shows up. Rachel shows up. And he falls instantly in love with her. This is what I want. Family. With that, let me close in prayer. Heavenly Father, we just ask that when we've made a mess of our own lives, that we'll just stop, look for you, and then run towards you. Our purpose in life is to be in relationship with you. Our purpose is to enjoy that relationship with you. That's what you are calling us towards. So wherever we're at, whatever problems, hardships, messes of our own making, let us just stop and look for you in all of that and move towards you. May we become your children by imitating you. We just pray this in your name. Amen. Once again, if you found today's video content helpful, be sure to subscribe to our channel, ring the bell, give it a big thumbs up, like and share this video. You can even help sponsor our weekly videos if you'd like. You can see Deborah or just contact us through the contact information down below. All these things help our community here and online in our growing YouTube channel. We thank you so very much. If you find yourself in a hole, stop digging, people. If you're running away, stop. Turn around. Run towards God. If you're in a church and you're afraid, anxious, fearful, depressed, because you've been taught an angry, judgmental God, it's time to go. It's time to go. Find a different church. I know there's something called the sunk cost fallacy. You guys know that, what the sunk cost fallacy is? People find it hard to leave groups and organizations that they've spent so much time, so much energy, so much money getting involved with, and they realize something's wrong. And because of all that they've sunk into it, they can't leave. But you can always leave. There's a better way down the road if you're moving towards God. Let me close with this benediction. As you leave this place, stop running away. Return to the purpose for which you were created. God bless you all. Go in peace. You are dismissed. Thank you.
We are one in Christ. We are one in God. We are one in unity. We are one in truth. We are one in faith.